Most companies don't fail the way people think they do. They don't collapse overnight. They don't suddenly forget how to operate. They don't lose customers all at once, the part nobody sees. They fail quietly, on paper, long before the doors close. Balance sheets weaken, debt accumulates, cash flow tightens. And from the outside, everything still looks normal. Stores are still open, phones are still answered, employees still show up. This is the phase most people never see. This video explains how private equity turns functioning businesses into financial extraction machines, and why collapse often comes after the profits are already taken. What private equity actually is. Private equity isn't primarily about building companies. It's about financial engineering. The goal isn't necessarily to improve what a company does. It's to restructure how money moves through it. The basic strategy looks simple. Buy a company using borrowed money. Place that debt onto the company itself. Extract value early. Exit before long-term costs become unavoidable. On the surface, this doesn't look destructive. Ownership changes quietly. Management remains. Brand names stay familiar. But underneath, the incentives shift. The company stops being a long-term operation and becomes a vehicle for returns. Once that happens, decisions change, even if nothing looks broken yet. The leveraged buyout trap. When private equity buys a company, it rarely pays the full price in cash. Instead, it uses something called a leveraged buyout, or LBO. That means the firm contributes a portion of equity, the rest is borrowed, and the company itself is responsible for the debt. The business didn't choose that leverage. It inherits it. Now the company must service large interest payments, pay recurring fees to its owners, maintain operations under tighter margins. Every dollar has a new priority. Growth becomes optional. Maintenance becomes negotiable. Stability becomes expensive. The company isn't trying to improve anymore. It's trying to avoid default. Operations take a backseat to debt. How value gets extracted. This is where the gutting actually happens. Private equity doesn't require a company to succeed long-term to generate strong returns. Value is extracted through mechanisms most people never see. Management and monitoring fees, paid regardless of performance. Dividend recapitalizations, where the company borrows more money to pay its owners directly. Asset sales, real estate, equipment, or intellectual property. Sale leasebacks, selling buildings for cash, then leasing them back at long-term cost. Each step weakens the company slightly. None of them look catastrophic alone, but together they change the company's future. The balance sheet shrinks, flexibility disappears, risk concentrates, and by the time trouble appears publicly, the owners have often already been paid. If the business eventually collapses, that risk stays with employees, communities, and creditors, not the fund. Why workers and customers pay. Once the balance sheet is loaded with debt, cuts aren't ideological, they're mathematical. Staff reductions, lower wages, fewer benefits, deferred maintenance, reduced service quality. These are not signs of mismanagement. They're signs of priorities shifting. Cash flow is no longer optimized for longevity. It's optimized for extraction. Customers notice quality slipping. Workers feel instability growing. Communities feel pressure building. But none of it looks like failure, yet. By the time decline becomes visible, exit strategies are often already in motion. The illusion of normalcy. This is what makes private equity damage so difficult to explain. Nothing breaks all at once. There's no single decision that kills the company. No villain moment, no obvious trigger, just a slow loss of resilience. What used to be survivable shocks become fatal under leverage. A downturn, a rate hike, a supply disruption. Events that healthy companies absorb become collapse points for hollowed out ones. The business didn't suddenly become incompetent. It became fragile. Why this continues? So why does this model persist? Because it works. For investors, returns are front-loaded. Risk is delayed. Losses are externalized. Incentives reward. Speed over stability. Leverage over patience. Extraction over durability. This doesn't require malicious intent. It requires a system where short-term returns are measured and long-term damage is ignored. Private equity doesn't need to destroy companies on purpose. The structure does it automatically. The quiet damage: most people think companies fail first and then lose money. In reality, many lose money first and fail later. Private equity doesn't always kill businesses, but it often removes their ability to survive stress. And by the time the doors finally close, the monster has already moved on. This is why private equity damage is hard to identify in real time. Nothing about it looks malicious. The language is professional. The structures are legal. The transactions are approved. Boards sign off. Advisors recommend it. Regulators allow it. From the outside, it looks like normal business activity. And that's the problem, because harm doesn't arrive as destruction. It arrives as optimization. By the time the consequences appear, the decisions that cause them are already irreversible. Private equity operates on a time delay. Profits are taken early, consequences arrive later, often much later. When businesses struggle years after acquisition, the connection is rarely made. Employees blame management. Customers blame quality. Communities blame the economy. But the balance sheet already told the story. Debt compounds quietly. Flexibility disappears gradually, and resilience fades without warning. When the collapse finally happens, it looks sudden, but it wasn't. Why this hits Main Street? This isn't abstract finance. This shows up in ordinary places. Empty storefronts, closed hospitals, delayed repairs, fewer workers doing more work. Communities don't lose businesses because demand disappears. They lose them because viability was extracted upstream. The storefront closes last. The damage happened years earlier, and by the time people notice, the ownership has already moved on.